As usual, I usually start my program with a word of prayer. So I'm going to do that right now. Father, we thank you, we bless you, we honor you for this time in your presence. We pray, God, that the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts will be acceptable. We thank you for this day that you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for all that you're doing in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen, amen, and amen. So, welcome to Moments with Pastor E. And today, I have the great honor of having an attorney. Can you believe that? I have an attorney sitting next to me. And she has an extensive bio, which I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to give her a moment to introduce herself, but I'll tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Emily Amara Gordon. She's the founder and principal attorney at Amara Law, LLC. Emily represents clients in family-based immigration cases, special immigrant juvenile status cases, and Massachusetts criminal defense cases. Emily opened her law firm in 2013, the day after being sworn into the Massachusetts bar. That is very impressive. Emily, how old are you? You look like 30 years old and you got all this thing under your belt. But, however, I'm going to give Emily a chance to say a little bit more about herself, and then we can go into the show.
Well, thank you, Pastor. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Sure. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. It's great to be here today. Yes, so I'm Emily. I run my own practice, as Pastor E mentioned. I'm also a big fan of technology. So in my practice, we use a lot of technology. Very involved in the American Bar Association. I've spoken nationally at our tech show in Chicago. Also a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, or for short, AILA, and I've spoken at their national conference, both in Orlando and also in Chicago. I guess lawyers like Chicago. So I do that as well. I am working on criminal cases and immigration cases that have a criminal component, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about today.
All right, Miss Emily. So I see you have a disclaimer here.
Oh, yes, the disclaimer.
Okay, so we're going to read the disclaimer. Nothing that I say today is legal advice or should be constructed to be legal advice. Every case is different and requires individualized legal advice. So if they want legal advice, they need to come to your office, right?
Come call me or another licensed attorney, either in Mass or if it's immigration. That would be best. But yeah, anything we say today, even if it applies to your situation, please don't specifically take it to heart, because every case is different.
All right. So, you specialize in immigrant juvenile status. Mm-hmm. I've never heard of that. Mm-hmm. So, do you care to tell us what that is, Emily?
I'd love to tell you.
Yeah.
I love talking about it. So, special immigrant juvenile status, for short, we say SIJ, which is the abbreviation SIJS. Is a very special program. It's near and dear to my heart. I've been working on these cases since I started practicing. It is a program. You have to be under 21 years old, and you have to have either one or both of your parents. We just need one in Massachusetts. So what I'm about to describe is Massachusetts specific. Either one or both of your parents has to have neglected, abandoned, or unfortunately there was abuse. You only need one of those three things. So abandonment, neglect, abuse. If you have one of those three, you can have two, you can have three. That generally qualifies somebody for SIJ status. The child We say child in immigration, it's under 21, has to be in the United States, and can't be reunified with the parent who either abandoned, abused, or neglected them. In Massachusetts, generally, if a parent passed away, that is constructive abandonment. So if there's a parent who is sadly deceased, that could be a case where we argue abandonment. It's a great program because it ultimately does lead to a green card. It unfortunately takes a very long time to get to the green card because we have such a backlog with visas. But once that wait is up, a child, an SIJ child, becomes a lawful permanent resident, and then in 5 years can apply for citizenship, and which is a great ending for a lot of our kids. We call them our kids who start out with SIJ claims.
So, Emily, you've had your law practice since 2013.
Yes.
So you must have seen a whole lot of this.
Yes.
How many kids, can you even estimate how many kids that has passed through your hands?
I've always wanted to sit down and run the numbers. Yeah. I think easily in the hundreds. It's easily. I'll do some quick math. Probably in the around the maybe the 200-300 number. Mm-hmm. It's pretty high. It's a huge part of my practice, and I've seen. In Massachusetts, we're very lucky because the first part of these cases, you have to go to family court. So that's why I mentioned Massachusetts, because depending on which state you're in, you have to work with that state court. And in Massachusetts, we've been very lucky. Since I've started, the law has expanded tremendously. So when I started, it was very difficult to go to family court for kids between 18 and 21. They generally were too old once they turned 18 for the family court to hear their case. And so the Massachusetts courts and then eventually the legislature expanded the statute, and now we can go up to 21, and there's a lot of great language in there which really helps SIJ kids with immigration. So I've been able to see the evolution, and I'm very proud of the state to see how they've adapted and changed and how to respond to the federal government. At one point even attacked 2 of our cases, and one of our major cases that came out of the Supreme Judicial Court, and the legislature responded with this amazing statute. So it's been fascinating.
That's amazing. Now, so how do you connect with these kids? How do you find out about the abuse and all this stuff to get the ball rolling for these kids?
Sure. Well, I think I don't know if it happened by fate or it was intentional. It wasn't intentional for me. I just started working on these cases, but I was, when I was in high school, I taught piano to very young people and who were in our studio, and then between undergrad and law school, I was a Spanish teacher to kids kindergarten through 5th grade. Okay. So I actually have been exposed to a lot of young people, and so I do have that experience. I also think one thing that we do in my practice is my staff, I have someone assigned to their case who is fairly young in the sense of, early 20s, and they build a rapport with them and have calls with them. My paralegal's amazing, and she's totally bilingual, and we have clients from Brazil. I have somebody who speaks Portuguese, and they have calls and build a relationship with them so that they feel comfortable, and we work through their cases, and we try and have multiple appointments with kids so they don't have to talk about their whole life in one appointment. Okay. So we say, like in Spanish, awesome. Like we have a lot of citas, and we also will ask them what they want, because sometimes somebody may want to just meet 2-3 times and just go through it all, or sometimes people want to say, let me talk about my life through the age of 12 when I was in El Salvador, and then we'll talk about what's going on here later. So we try and be sensitive to everybody's needs, because it's clearly very difficult to talk about.
And it's good that you have young people who, they can relate to. They're not, they're not coming into, all these people that look scary to them, they have, practically their peers.
Yeah, and we try and use very friendly language, and also with the technology piece. So we text a lot, and they really like that. We use emojis, and we just try and meet them where they are and respond with a language that makes sense to them.
So does some of your cases come out from the 51A, with the child protective care where people can file 51As if a child is in danger or whatever. Do you get those cases?
So I don't see that as much because I do know there are some lawyers that will work with DCF.
Yes.
And originally when SIJ started, I'm not an expert on it, so
Okay.
fact check, I wasn't practicing then, but it originated out of something called TVPRA, which is an a federal agreement. I think it was either, I can't remember which Bush it was. I think it was Bush number 2. And it was a trafficking statute to protect children.
Oh, okay.
I came out of there, and then it was mostly for kids in foster care who were in state care and then needed status. So that's my understanding of the origination of it. I don't see that as much. I just haven't gotten those cases,
Okay.
but there are people who do work with
Okay.
the state and DCF for children who are in foster
Okay.
care. I tend to have kids who come in either on their own and they're a little bit older, meaning
Oh, okay.
18, 19, or they come in with a family member,
Okay.
or they get reunited with an aunt, uncle, or a father or mother here, and then the other parent is back home, or they're here and everything's fine. The abandonment, abuse, or neglect can happen here in Massachusetts. So can be a breakdown in the relationship once they're here. That's what I tend to see.
Okay. Now, what's your background? Because you said you speak Spanish and all that stuff. So, where are you originally from, or your family is from?
I like to say, no soy hispana por sangre, pero soy hispana por corazón. I'm not Spanish by blood, but I'm Spanish in my heart. So,
Okay.
yeah. No, so I'm not Hispanic.
Okay.
No, I'm
Okay.
I'm mezza Italiana, so my mother's southern Italy, and
okay.
my father's Jewish. But
Okay.
ever since I was little, wanted to learn Spanish.
Okay.
So I said I would speak Spanish and live in Spain one day when I was, a little picola,
Yeah.
and then here we are. So
Here we
I
are.
love Spanish. I lived in Barcelona in college
Okay.
and was a Spanish major.
Good.
So I do, ironically, Italian's probably my fourth language. So
Okay.
I studied Spanish and French through
Yeah.
college. And I just love it. I just love the language, and I love representing the Latino and Hispanic population. So
that's what I was going to ask you. So it sounds like you serve the, a big Latina population.
a lot of my clients, I have, for my SIJ kids, it's a lot of clients from Central America.
Okay.
And I have a good amount of clients from Brazil.
Okay.
So we can, I do, if we have a client from Brazil, we have someone who speaks Portuguese. But I think we can all kind of get by and with technology and use, so it works. And they sometimes speak some English. So when we have to do the formal things, of course, it's somebody who's fully bilingual. But texting and that type of thing, we can do in Portuguese, and I can read it and get and understand it to a certain level. But I've had clients, I have clients from all over the world. I have a good amount of clients from China. I've had clients from Europe. I've had clients from Africa, everywhere.
Okay.
And I always say my PSA with SIJ cases is what we tend to see, and I think the core of it when it started tended to be cases from Central America, kids fleeing the Maras, gang violence, horrible conditions that they were faced with back home when they came to America. But I always say, if you don't feel you fit in the standard SIJ box, that doesn't mean you don't have an SIJ case.
Right.
So I represented kids from Asia, from Europe, who, somebody may have said, oh, you come from maybe a upper middle class family, or you're in college, that's not an SIJ case. You didn't flee, you had a good life in China. You didn't flee. Or even you had a great life in Mexico. You didn't flee. But then we unpack it and find out, say, mom really wasn't caring for the child and hasn't called the child in 3 years and doesn't know where the child's going to college, and that child's in therapy. So I always say, yes, there tends to be a standard fact pattern, at least in this part of the country. But if you don't think, you are someone who fits into what other people may say is that's an SIJ case, get a second opinion, because there are more SIJ kids out there than I think people realize, and that's one of my missions, is to find the SIJ kids.
Yeah, awesome. Now, and we're not going to talk politics. Let me just read that disclaimer. But given the climate that we're in right now, what are you seeing? Are you seeing more of this, these cases? Has your business boomed because of what's going on right now with, ICE and all this stuff?
So I think what is busy is it's different. I know it's a little different than what a lot of us had expected. I mean, I think some of us, me included, unfortunately saw this coming as a potential pathway, but
Yes.
I don't think we thought it would be to this level.
Right.
So the interest is heightened, but the part of the problem is this administration has eroded so many pathways that we
Right.
had before.
Right.
And so I'll use SIJ as an example. The Biden administration came out. The concept existed before, but the Biden administration applied something called deferred action to SIJ kids, which was great because it defers action. So it's not status, but it's saying you are a very low and a priority for enforcement, and it would give SIJ kids work authorization, which
Okay.
changed their life
Okay,
because
yes.
the wait time to get a
Right,
green card.
right.
This administration, I think it was last spring, got rid of it. So if you have it, you can keep it until it expires. No one else would get new deferred action. So all these kids were going through the family process and are finding out they can't get work authorization.
What do they do?
Well, luckily, actually, this is very timely because I think it was yesterday or the day before, I think 2 days ago, there was a lawsuit, and there was I believe it was either preliminary injunction saying that for now the government has to continue the deferred action program.
Oh, good.
So we're hoping that hopefully the government doesn't
Comply.
appeal. Yeah, and this continues, and they
Yes.
start issuing deferred action again
Right.
quickly. So, but that's an example that one thing I worry about is, and social media is good and bad, but
Yeah.
if, someone hears, say on TikTok or online or somewhere, there's no more deferred action, so there's no more SIJs. And so they think the program is
It's over.
Or it's not worth it because it's not a protection from deportation.
Right.
But it is something. So that's an example where maybe before there would be more interest because, oh, this is great.
Right,
I can
right.
get a work card. I'm protected. Oh, they got rid of the work card
Yeah.
deferred action. And a lot of times people confuse getting a work card with status.
Right,
And they think
right.
if I have a work card, I have status. If I don't have a work card, I don't have status. But they're often very distinct.
So how do you protect that, though? How do you combat the stuff that happens on social media?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
It's tough. I actually just received a text yesterday morning from one of my SIJ clients, and I figured she saw something online, but I was very happy she checked with me
Yes.
first, and I explained to her, she said, let's apply for work authorization tomorrow, and I had to explain to her, no, we first need to wait and see what happens, then you have to get deferred action. We aren't sure whether we have to affirmatively apply or if the government will automatically give it out. Then we apply for work authorization. So the piece is, wherever she got this information, it's you can get work authorization, but I know there's 3 steps.
Right.
So I try and educate my clients. I try and validate that they heard it and I understand they're interested and they're excited. So I try and validate that feeling, but also explain to them why.
Right.
And they're very smart. Once I explain to them, there are all these steps, and we don't want to just start sending things in and spending money and time
Right.
when we don't know the pathway. So let's just wait a little bit, a few weeks, and I make a plan. So, I'll check in with you in 30 days, and I also say, you check in with me in 30 days. And I, of course, have it on my list to check in, but they know, okay, in 30 days, we're going to talk about this again, if not before.
Right.
So I try and hear them, recognize it, but then educate them.
Right.
And hopefully, that works and we have a plan going forward. But it is concerning, and the bigger concern is if clients don't reach out and I have no idea that they got that information. At least if they reach out to me, I can help them course correct a little bit.
Yes.
And that's why I try and always encourage communication from them, because if they're afraid to talk to me or think it's going to cost them more money, then I think they're going to listen to TikTok more instead of me. So it's that communication and culture piece.
Yeah.
So people feel comfortable coming to me. And I try and always listen because, hey, things are changing so fast. They may have seen something and I want to know about it, right? Like when that happened, I was really busy that day and I found out later at night. But, I only have this much time. So when I saw the text from her at 8 a.m., I said, okay, this is out there. Yeah. And then I, was able to look more. So I like when people come to me.
Right.
Because I get to hear what's going on the streets, and that's helpful. So they're helping me
in the social media streets.
Yeah, let me know in the social media streets. But yeah, it's tough and it's definitely... it's a new world practicing now, especially, I know I haven't been around forever, but, 13 years ago, there was no TikTok and even 5, right? So if that's the case. So it's definitely new to have to function around that and a lot of misinformation that's out there.
Right. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, funding. How do these kids pay for this service?
Yeah, I know. I think about that a lot, and I don't know. So there are a lot of nonprofits.
Okay.
There are nonprofits that just represent clients directly. There are nonprofits who work with law firms who are doing nonprofit work, but they're not immigration firms, so they help them.
Right.
And they're wonderful organizations. I don't ask, source of funds. I do if it comes from somebody else, I have to get a release, and I want to get a release because I want to make sure nobody's being controlled or the person paying doesn't think they're the client and they control the case. So I'm very sensitive to that. I think they may have an asylum case and have work authorization through that, and so they're able to work.
Yeah.
I particularly do a lot of the cases in family court. So immigration lawyers who don't go to family court will send me their SIJ kids. So they may have been working with an immigration lawyer for a while and have an asylum case with work authorization, so they're working and they're saving money, and that may be, the SIJ case is a little stronger, so they're using that work hard to fund another pathway. They work really, for those who are working, they work very hard. It breaks my heart. I wish there was more funding. I wish there was more we could do. I wish there was a way we could have more of a system so that we could get more of these cases through quickly, or some type of work, but it's not through anyone's fault. I think the immigration lawyers are working so hard to help as much as they can. We all are, but it's definitely, it breaks my heart that sometimes someone could have this future and it could change their life, but whether they have access to it or not could be dependent on money. It's almost like, and now I'm getting political, healthcare. I don't want to see anyone not be able to get treated because they can't afford health insurance. I think that is wrong. I also think, a child who's had this happen to them, if they can't afford services, I think that they should be able to get a lawyer. How to do that is well above my pay grade. I have some ideas, but it's almost like indigent defense. So the criminal work. You can't afford an attorney. You have a right to have one appointed to you. I wish that children who qualified for this could get an attorney, and it was funded somehow, whether through the state or the city, or if anyone is out there, is CEO of a tech company and
with a bucket of money.
Well, actually, I will mention Angelina Jolie and Microsoft, I believe, founded KIND, which is one of the organizations I was hinting at, Kids in Need of Defense. They're wonderful, and they work with a lot of law firms to do pro bono work. And I believe they were started by Angelina Jolie and Microsoft. So if anyone's out there and wants to start another organization,
that's
it just changes so many lives, and they work on policy, though they were involved in this lawsuit. So there's so many places we need the work and the help.
But that's the thing, with all these lawsuits, it takes so much time to go through the court system and then the appeal system, and in the meantime, these poor kids cannot work because they've been picked up, they've been shipped off to the land of nowhere. You know, it's really, really troubling what's happening right now.
It's awful.
And you feel so bad for these kids, you know, because they didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask to be here, you know, and nobody's taking care of them. And you know, there's a way that, you know, our system could, but we're limited as to what we can do now.
I know.
Because it's so political.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
And I say, you know, I recognize everyone has a different position, different political perspective, but you know, these kids, just like you mentioned, Pastor E, they came here. If they came here on their own as young adults, or their parents brought them, they didn't choose. I represented a kid once. He was from Central America. He didn't really speak Spanish. He came here. He was 1 year old when he came with his brothers. I did his brother's case. I was actually doing his consult, and family thought the program was up to 18. And because I always say, do you have siblings? I want to know the family dynamics, what happened. He said, I have a brother, he's 20. I said, when does he turn 21? He said, in 3 weeks. I said, where is he? He said, he's sleeping. He just had to finish work. I said, go wake him up. And we got his case through. But he, you know, his brother spoke Spanish, bilingual, but he was 1 when he came here. And, you know, and he was sweet. I said to him, is it okay if we pause your case, because he was so young, and do your brother's first? And he said, of course. They were a beautiful family, but he was 1 year old, you know, and it was sad. As you know, his mother passed away. She was very sick and had cancer, and passed away here in Boston. And wonderful family. His father ended up being sick, and they all were. I've never seen a family, and I know it happens a lot, but they really stuck out to me, that they stayed together and they helped each other, and they were a unit, and they were a team, and they worked together, and they really just had each other, and they were just they're a beautiful family. And you know, we want to turn our backs on these kids. I mean, and they work so hard, and they're bilingual and sometimes trilingual, and you know, they're the future. So we invest in our young people.
Right.
Let's not just invest in our young people who are born here, but our young people. And I know there's a narrative about crime and this and that. These kids have to get vetted so much. They go through fingerprints. They have to go to immigration court a lot of times. They got to maneuver court dates and this and that. If they make it to the I-360, the SIJ piece, and the green card, they've been through more checks and balances most people do their whole life. Let them be here. Let them have a future. Let them work. And if something somewhere wires were crossed, the government, that's why we have all these steps. Exactly. And I'm not necessarily endorsing all the steps or not endorsing that's why
it's a lot.
Security has a job and they'll do their thing. But
it's a lot.
People, these kids, you know, the kids I represent, they never had interactions with the law. They go to work, they go home, and a lot of my SIJ kids, because the cases take so long, I started with them when they were 14, 15. They now have their own babies and their own lives, you know, and their kids are citizens. What are we going to do? Rip them away from
But that's what
children?
We're doing. That's what we're doing.
You know, it's not a future for the country, in my opinion.
I know. Because the statistics prove that, you know, people that are citizens and people that live here commit more crimes than these poor people that are just trying to make a life.
Yeah.
Especially these kids. I mean, it's like all they want to do is to go to school, get educated, get a job, you know, and take care of their families, you know, and start their own families.
Yeah.
So what is your success rate?
Well, ethically, I don't think we're allowed, lawyers, at least in Mass, are allowed to give percentages because the reason is I try and explain it kind of creates a false, you know.
I got you.
You know, and we have a lot of rules as lawyers. But have I ever lost an SIJ case? I've had a few where when I mentioned the law changed. So I had one that we had a certain pathway, but when it opened up to 21, we had another pathway. Okay. So it worked out. And those were a handful. So we had to kind of keep going. Especially, I call them my original 5 or 6 kids that I represented. The law wasn't what it is today. And so we had to just keep, like, you know, I'm not as good at sports. When he's swinging the bat and hoping we hit the ball, but we were just kept swinging, and we didn't get thrown out of the game. So we just kept going, and it did work. But I will say this: I don't take asylum cases anymore. I used to, so I have familiarity
Yeah.
with it from years ago.
Yeah.
But generally, asylum is difficult to win.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It doesn't mean people shouldn't apply, but
Right.
it's challenging. SIJs in general, it has a very, very high success rate.
Oh, good.
Very high. Once you get through probate court, family court, you're probably fine. I mean,
That's
again,
good.
no guarantee, but that's the difficult piece. And at least in family court, it's not always easy, but we can go back. We can work with the judges, so we can keep swinging the bat if there's some complication. So in general, the SIJ program, if someone has the facts, and we can make service on the defendant, we either have an address and we can find them. It's a pretty high, very high success rate.
Very good, very good. So, you're also a defense attorney.
I am, yes.
So you're in court defending people. How do you do all this stuff?
I don't know.
Do you sleep?
I do. I like to sleep a lot. If I don't sleep, you don't want to talk to me. It's no good. I gotta sleep. I don't know, deep breaths and prayer, I guess.
Yes, good.
And some text sprinkled in to help me stay
And
organized.
you're teaching too.
Yeah, that was actually a course, because we talked about it. I was covering for the professor.
Oh,
I
wonderful.
teach, every year she has me at Suffolk Law teaching legal technology and law practice. So I guest lecture every year on that topic.
So you're well-rounded.
Yeah, I try to stay busy. It keeps me off the news unless I need to read it. But when I tend to read it more than I probably should, so I do all these things to distract me from what's going on in Washington.
I know, that's too much. So you have a website here, the WWUCIS government
that was, just in case I wanted to give you for SIJs to just check it out.
Okay.
And I will say, I'm glad you mentioned that, Pastor E. For those who would like more information on programs, and we talk about social media and some misinformation that may be out there, I always say go to the USCIS, so I'll say it a little slower, USCIS, which is U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services. If you're applying for a benefit, citizenship, green card, the SIJ piece that's with Homeland Security, that website has the forms, the instructions, information. So I always tell people, if you're going to look something up on your own and you aren't familiar with reputable versus non-reputable sources, check out that website.
So it's the www.uscis.gov.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you can navigate to all the different topics there.
So it'll bring you to all the forms and whatever you're looking for.
Yes.
Wonderful. So did you hear that? If you're looking to get information, go to www.u S as in Sam, C as in Charlie, I, S as in Sam.gov. And you will be able to navigate the system and get whatever information you need.
And if it's complicated, don't worry, don't feel discouraged. It is complicated. It's not necessarily
I've been on this website.
Yeah, well, even for me, I'm always reading stuff and I look at the instructions and the form numbers. But I will give a quick PSA. Those forms are free. So if anyone's asking you they're filing fees, but if anyone's charging money to give you the form, the actual form, they're free on the website.
But there are websites out there that are doing that.
Yeah.
They're charging you up to $250 just to get the forms.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned.
When you can get it right here for free.
It's awful. It's
everybody's
awful.
trying to make money.
Is the monetization of, and this is, I'll just quickly mention, it's a complicated topic, but there's a lot of unauthorized practice of law. There's a lot of notarios and fraud and people being taken advantage of. In general, to fill out the forms and file them, you either have to be a licensed attorney. You can be, since immigration's federal in general, and I have clients all over the country and the world, that's okay, as long as I'm just working with immigration.
Right.
I can only go into state court in Massachusetts, but I can do a green card case anywhere in the country. But in generally, they're a licensed attorney, licensed in one of the 50 states, DC. or somebody who's what's called BIA accredited, which is usually someone at a nonprofit.
Okay.
So if it's somebody you're paying, private type
Right,
levels, not a
right.
nonprofit, they should be a licensed attorney.
Mm-hmm.
If they aren't, be very careful.
Yeah.
I know there's some, there's a clinic or there's a little bit of gray area there, but in general, if someone's, doing taxes in your immigration forms, I wouldn't do it. And, the thing with immigration is you can very easily make somebody's situation worse.
Right.
Very easily.
Right.
A lot of people have problems because they themselves, without knowing, made a mistake, filed for something they weren't eligible
Right.
for, or they had a criminal record or something, and they just exposed themselves to the government. So I always say, before I put that FedEx envelope in the FedEx box, you got to make sure it's good, because if there's a problem and it's not solid, once it's gone and the FedEx truck takes it away to the government,
Forget it.
it's gone, and that record is there.
Right.
And your record is your record, and you can't take it back.
Right.
So I say to people, be very careful, and if it seems too good to be true, we know the ending to that story. So double check.
It is.
And, and like medical, get a second opinion.
Yeah.
If you can, get a second opinion.
Exactly. So you also do marriage-based green cards and
Yes.
family petitions. I think somebody out there may be interested in that.
Yeah.
So give a little background on that.
I'm the immigration matchmaker. The amount of dating to love to babies, I got a whole plethora of, it's great. I've been doing those for a while, and they're really nice to see. I love when I get to see the babies. One of my clients just had a child, so I get to see the photos, and it's just really sweet. So most of the cases I do are people came into the U.S. with a visa, and they marry a U.S. citizen, and that U.S. citizen petitions for them.
Yeah.
And they get a green card.
Yeah.
If they were married less than 2 years, when they get the first green card, they get a 2-year green card. And they have to do something else after, too much math, but if you're married more than 2 years, you get a 10-year.
Yeah.
And then you apply for citizenship after 3. Now, you can still do these cases for people who came in through the border and didn't come in with a visa. It's more complicated.
Right.
You generally need a waiver.
Right.
And right now I say, cuidado, caution. There's a strategy there, given how aggressive the federal government's being with enforcement.
Right.
That I think warrants a real conversation with an attorney on strategy.
Yeah.
But for people who came in with a visa, the advantage is when you come in with a visa, if you are out of status, that is automatically forgiven if you're married to a U.S. citizen or the parent of a U.S. citizen child who's over 21. So if your child is 21 or older and is a U.S. citizen, they can petition for you as an immediate relative, and then a spouse.
I've seen that. I had a friend, she didn't have a green card or anything, and came here. Her daughter was young, and when she turned 21, she was able to petition for her. And, she got her green card
that's
and
great.
stuff. Yeah, so
Happy to hear
there
that.
are ways, So your life is full.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Your life is full, and it is really amazing the knowledge that you have. Well, you've been an attorney for God knows how long.
Yesterday was my anniversary, actually.
Yes.
12 years.
12 years.
Yesterday,
Yes. And it's amazing you have your own law firm and all that stuff. Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that? Because I have to tell you, Emily is a wealth of knowledge. Anything you want to know about immigration, or even if you're looking for a defense attorney, thank God that I don't need one, Emily. And I hope I never need to see
I always say that on the defense side, unless it's like a drive without a license or something. Yeah.
I hope I never
don't want
to see it.
But I do what I like to call light criminal. So I don't do the heavy stuff. So I do like drive without a license, district court.
Yes.
So no one goes to jail for more than 2.5 years, and it tends to be a lot of resolutions, and that we go to trial, but it's not no one's going to jail for 20
Right.
years. So that's what I do. Now, if something's more serious,
Mm-hmm.
there's the other lawyer in my office has that experience,
Okay.
and I co-counsel with someone else. But I like to stay in district court. It's more of a community court. I work with programs, and
families
I like
and-
the and we have a lot of people who have immigration issues, and if you're not a citizen, you have a criminal case, that gets really complicated.
Yeah.
So that's where it ties together. But anyway, I hope, I always say there's certain things, yes, you don't want to have to call, but if you or anyone is in that situation, I'm always happy to talk to people.
How do they get in touch with you,
Yeah,
Emily?
sure. So the best way would be, let me think, email. I can mention, and our phone number. We actually have an easy phone number. I picked it. It's a 617-505-1010. So I want to make it easy. 617 Boston 505-1010. So double a 5.
Oh, okay.
Because if anyone was ever arrested or needed to memorize my number, I want it to be easy to memorize. So that's why I picked that. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can Google me. I'm all over the internet.
I got you. So-
Websites, Google, podcasts. So if you put in Emily Amara Gordon, you will find me, and then you can get my email. I won't bore everyone and rattle off our email, but
That's okay.
give us a call, text, email, and
Yes.
LinkedIn. We're happy to help.
And I have to tell you, I have Emily's information. And I know there might be someone watching who, it might not be you, but someone who is, looking, to do some immigration business. That's your girl right here. And if you know about kids who are being abused and all that stuff, and, you can talk to Emily. If she can't do the case, you will make a referral to somebody, because
Absolutely.
you've been in the business for so long, 13 years. Just look at her. Tell me if she's been in the business 13 years. But, it's amazing. Your resume speaks for itself, and I'm so happy that you were able to come in, and I have learned a whole lot from you. I mean, half of this stuff I have never heard of in my life. And I'm glad that I don't know some of them either. Because, but I thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for doing the interview. And,
course.
like I said, Emily is the person to know if you want any information on immigration. She is the person, and I can be reached. You can reach out to me, Pastor E. Put a comment in the chat if you're interested in getting to know more about Emily, and I will certainly get on to her, or I'll give you her information. So do you want to give them your phone number again?
Oh, sure. It's 617-505-1010, so 1010. And then if you want to email me directly, it's Emily, EMILY, at amaralaw.com. So it's AMARA law.com. So Emily at amaralaw.com. I'm always on my email, so feel free to reach out. And I want to thank you, Pastor E, and thank you for having this conversation, because it was informative, it was positive, and I appreciate that, because I know communities are, and rightfully so, in a lot of fear.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a lot of misinformation and information out there that's tough to navigate. So it was very nice to have this conversation. And I always say, knowledge is power. So it's great to talk about ways we can help people and navigate this, and, hopefully get through the next 3 years and some change, and, work on getting through that the best we can.
Yes. And it's such a time of unrest too. Children are afraid to leave their houses to go to school, and parents don't want to go anyplace. It's just a heartbreaking time.
It's
in our country. I've been living here for a long time, and I've never seen it like this.
It's heartbreaking.
So it's good to know that there are people like you who are out there advocating for, especially the younger generation, who are actually our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that, my grandparents came here, and now I get to be a lawyer, and we were lucky enough that they took my grandparents in and through Ellis Island, and I'm now here, and
Right.
if I had where my grandmother grew up in southern Italy, she had to drop out of school and went to the third grade. And this one way I probably do these cases. Went to the third grade. She had to work on a farm, and they couldn't afford to pay for her to go to school. And then she came to America, and I get to be a lawyer.
And you're a lawyer
I
today.
get to be,
oh my!
But
God.
I also thank my family, but also the United States,
Right.
For having that opportunity.
Yes.
And I say to people, especially my my SIJ kids, I'll talk about, whether them or their kids or their grandchildren, that could be your brain surgeon one day. That could be your teacher.
Yes.
That could be, the owner of the salon where you go and you look forward. You just don't know. These are very important people, parts of the community.
Right.
And, they'll always be grateful if we just reach out a hand and help people and give people the benefit of the doubt and remember where we came from.
Right.
And I wouldn't be sitting here if Ellis Island didn't run in my family, in both sides of my family. And so I just say for a minute, think about that and think about where your grandchildren, great-grandchildren will be in 100 years.
That's right.
And all the people will be helping
That's
them.
right.
And if somebody can survive traveling from Central America through Mexico to the United States, or on a plane, from Asia and coming to the other side of the world, isn't that the kind of quality of a person you want, helping you or operating on you? Or, that takes a lot of character and determination.
And it's just the cruelty of the whole thing. I'm from the Caribbean, and I moved here about 39 years ago, with a young daughter, 8, and I had a second daughter here. My oldest, she has 2 kids, so she's doing very well. She's raising her kids here. That's the next generation, who knows what they'll become, and this is supposedly the land of the brave, and the land of the free and the home of the brave. I think we've kind of lost that a little bit.
We have.
But hopefully, with the work that you do and people like yourself doing some good work, giving these children an opportunity, and I'm so glad to hear you say that, there has been some success. Yes, you're not going to win all of them. You're not going to be able to save everybody. But if you save 1, you save 2, you save 3, it's a blessing.
It is, yeah. I'm lucky to do this work.
Yeah, so continue to do the work you're doing. You'll be in my prayers.
Well, thank you, Pastor.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
I know you're a friend of Eddie's.
Yeah.
Yes, that's your dad, right?
Yeah, that's my dad. That's Pops. So.
That's Pops.
Hi, Pops.
I know. He's probably somewhere listening.
He probably is. I'm going to get notes later.
Yeah. He's going to say,
I'm going to get notes.
Why did you do that? And why did you do that?
He's production.
Yes.
So
yes.
Make me better.
Yes. So I have a wealth of information here I can share with people. So feel free to inbox me, whatever, call me, and we'll get you on track.
Well,
so thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor E. I
and
appreciate
thank you so much for allowing her to be here.
My marketing department's in the back,
yes.
everybody. So.
Amen. So we have come to the end of our broadcast. It was wonderful having Emily here. I have learned a few things, some of the things I didn't know, but, like she said, knowledge is power. So thank you so much for sharing, your knowledge with us. And one of these days we'll have you back.
I'd love to come back.
Yes,
I would love to.
Yeah, we'll come back and talk about something else. You're a lawyer, so we'll go down a different road, in your lawyering, whatever you do, we'll talk about it. But we'll definitely have you back.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I love to talk, but I particularly love talking with you.
Oh, wow. So we're both talkers.
Yeah, we are. Get ready for the second hour, everybody. So you thought we were done? Go get your popcorn.
Get your popcorn.
We're going to do an after show. Eddie's really going to get mad because we're ready to do the after show.
He's loving this.
No,
Eddie's
He's
loving
the best.
Eddie.
He's the best.
Hi.
Great A production, Eddie.
Wherever you are, Eddie. Hi.
Great job.
So I just want to say we've come to the end of the broadcast. Thank you for joining us. I hope you were sharing the broadcast. Lots of good nuggets today. And Miss Emily, I'm going to have her back So, if you have questions, you can inbox me too. So the next time she comes back, we'll have more questions for her. So until next time, this is Pastor E saying, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. I love you. See you soon. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Pastor E.
This is good. This was good. I was...
Answer to